What is up, you guys? My name's Jason, and today I'm going to be taking you through a really cool tutorial. Now, this tutorial is going to be unlike anything you've ever seen before. More specifically, we're going to go into Lumino City, or I don't know how to say it. We're going to be going into that game, and we're going to be playing it. While we're playing the game, I'm going to be critiquing the game, sort of. Not necessarily saying this is bad about it, but we're going to be going through it, and I'm going to be pointing out why the game is so well designed, okay? If you guys really like this first video, I'm going to continue to go ahead and keep creating these, and we can go through the entire game if you want and figure out how to recreate basically the entire game. If you do like this, go ahead and comment down below and let me know. Also, let me know what type of other games you want me to go and recreate, and we can go through them, play them, and recreate them. Alright, let's go ahead and give this a shot. So, we're going to create a new game. Now, the first project we're probably going to do is we're going to recreate this screen right here. Now, you'll notice that they're really drawing your eyes into what they want you to look at. And they want you to look at that center where it says the photographer, which is the level that I'm on right now. But it's a lot lighter than the outside area, and you'll also notice that that area is in focus and the outer area is out of focus. This all has to do with drawing in the eyes, which you'll learn a lot more later in my tutorials, is that the way you create good artwork is by creating a focal point. So let's go ahead and let's create a new game. So we'll hit new, and then play. Alright, cool. So we have this cool layout right now. Let's go ahead and enter. What is up, Grandpa? Now, as I was saying, there's been some terrible trouble at the city. Now, this is another important thing about game design, which is pretty obvious to most people, but it's something that you really want to focus on and learn if you really want to create amazing games, is you have to have amazing stories. So, the story here in this game is very well thought out. Let's go ahead and head down there, see what's down there. Oh, puzzle, eh? Let's go ahead and see what happens. So as you can see here, we got some really cool graphics going on, and I'd love to create some of this stuff with you guys. So while we're here playing the game, let's go ahead and study it really quick, so when we get into Photoshop, we know what we're trying to create. Well, first off, they have a paper texture background, and then they have, on this paper texture, it looks like almost like on the back side of it are some architectural drawings or engineer drawings. And then they have their drawings that are laid out, which are very clean and crisp, and they're in black and white, and then there's really light shades of gray in some areas. So we want to make note about that. I think they want us to put these bags of tea in there, so I'll try to grab them. If I can get it in there. Uh-oh. Let's see what's up. Now, these are some really cool motion graphics, and later we can possibly get into this stuff if you guys are interested in learning it. Let's check out what happened to Grandpa. Oh my gosh, he's gone. Looks like we got a book. Alright, let's select that book. Let's see, what do we got inside? Handy manual. Alright, this would be a really cool asset to recreate, so we can definitely put this on our list of things we want to recreate from this game. So, let's go ahead and head back. Where will it take us? Let's see. Alright, cool. So you'll notice here at this point, it's not even gameplay anymore. This is just an actual animated sequence, which we can also recreate. Now, this is where we get to the part where things become actual physical 3D models, but that's okay. Some of this stuff we'll actually be able to recreate, other parts we won't. So this is the city. Let's see what we can do. I think if we grab this stick over here, pick it up. Let's come over to this box. So yeah, we got a stick. Let's see what happens. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. So to start off, I'm here in Photoshop and I have a 700 pixel by 700 pixel document, and the document has a 150 pixel per inch resolution. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first project we're going to create from this game is the actual main character. Now, I've done a search online for cardboard texture because all the characters in this game are made of cardboard, so we're going to need some of that texture. Now, I found this website right here that has some really good cardboard textures. I'll leave the link in the description so you can check it out. And then I chose this actual cardboard texture right here, and I'll also leave this link in the description. So what I'll do is I'll right-click it, copy image, then come into Photoshop and go ahead and paste that in, just like so. And then I want to shrink that down so that it fits better into my document. Now this is really important because the whole reason why you're bringing in texture is so that it brings some scale into your actual object. So by having this cardboard texture in there, it's going to show that our character is actually pretty small because you can see by the size of the texture of the cardboard. Hit enter. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create the pieces that will make up our character. So I'm going to drag my character back up to the top, and then I'm going to go ahead and come back down to my cardboard layer. Then using my marquee tool and selecting the circular one, I'm going to go ahead and make 3 circular selections. So I'll create one holding down shift to create a perfect circle. Then in between selections, I can go ahead and hold down shift again, and that'll make it so I can add a new selection to this. So then I'm going to make one for the body. So somewhere about that size should be good. It looks like her body is about 1/3 of the size of her head. And then I'm going to create the last one, which will be the hands. So holding down shift again, I can go ahead and create that last one for the hands. Perfect. Next, let's go ahead and invert the selection by hitting Ctrl Shift I, and then we're going to go ahead and hit delete. If you're on a Mac, it's going to be Command Shift I to do that. Next, let's go ahead and copy this layer right here by selecting it and pasting it like so. Then we can go ahead and turn off this background layer for now, and we're going to drag this head down to about there. So that's going to be the base for our head. Next, what we want to do is we want to create the hair. So I'm going to copy this layer, and then I'm going to go ahead and use my circular marquee tool once again, and I'm going to create the shape of the hair by selecting like so, and then I'll do the same thing from the other side, holding down shift so I get a new selection. So just like that, and now those will get merged together. Then I can invert the selection, hit delete. Now you can't tell it because it's right on top of the other, but if I move this out of the way, you see that just created our hair shape by deleting this outside area away. I'll undo that, put it back into place. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come down to our head layer, and using my transform tool, which is Command T if you don't know, I'm going to go ahead and shrink that down, and I'm going to shrink it down holding Shift and Alt at the same time. That way I can shrink it down from the center and keep its proportions. So I'm going to shrink it down just the tiniest bit smaller so that we get a tiny little ledge on that hair, just like so. Next, let's go ahead and create her hair bun. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to turn on our back layer again, use our circular marquee tool, and make sure we're on that layer, copy it, paste it, then we're going to go ahead and grab that layer and bring it over just like so. We want to put it behind that hair piece, and then we're going to go ahead and copy this layer by hitting Ctrl J on our keyboard, and we can drag that new copy over like so. Perfect. Now I'm going to shrink that down just a tiny bit using my transform tool, hit enter. Great. Now let's go ahead and color this in. We can go ahead and turn that background layer off so we can't see it any longer. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and merge all of our hair pieces together. So we'll merge that together. So now that hair piece is all one piece and our head is one piece. Next, let's go ahead and add a new layer above this, right click it, and come up to create clipping layer mask. So now this new layer is a clipping layer mask for our hair piece, meaning if now we select our hair color, so let's select a color somewhere around like there should be good. We go ahead and fill that in. You see it only fills in within the shape of that layer that it's a clipping layer mask for. Next, what we want to do is we want to change the blend mode from normal to multiply, so that way we can still see our texture through it. Now we haven't chosen the exact right color for this because it doesn't really match this right here. So let's go ahead and try to find the exact color. So I think if we come a little bit more darker, great, I think that color will work. Next, let's add a clipping layer mask to our next layer. So we'll right click, create clipping layer mask, and then we're going to fill that in with our skin tone. So I'm going to find a skin tone color. So I might come a little bit more into the yellows, and we're probably going to want to make this pretty bright, maybe a little bit more yellow. Hit OK. We'll fill that in, and then we're going to change the blend mode from normal to multiply, and I think that color actually looks really good. All right, great. Next, what we need to do is we need to add in those eyes. So I'm going to select first a black color, and I'm going to go ahead and, using my brush tool on a round edged brush, I'm going to go ahead and fill in 2 dots, small ones, so probably about that size should work. And I'll put another one right there. Next, I'm going to go ahead and select a light gray color, so about there should work. And then I'm going to put another one right next to it, like so. Oops, a little bit too far over. So now we created that nice little shadow on the eyes. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add in that hair scrunchie. So I'm going to come back up to my brown layer, and then I'm going to come up into my saturated red, and I'm going to go ahead and fill this area in like so. I'm just eyeballing it in and hand painting that. If you wanted to, you could separate each one of these into their own separate shape with its own separate clipping layer mask, but I find this to be much quicker, so I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to switch back over to my brown and fill that back in because I got over a little too much. Next, let's go ahead and move on to the body. So I'm going to take all these layers that make up the head, and I'm going to select them and put them into a folder. So now that's all one folder. Next, I'll come back down to my bottom layer, and I'm going to select the circle that makes up the shape of the body. So I'll copy that and paste it, and that will paste it onto a new layer for me, and I'll bring that right underneath the head. Then I can turn that background layer off. Now, I think the body that we created is a little bit too large, so I'm going to go ahead and use my transform tool to shrink that down a tiny bit. About there should work. Then using the arrow keys on my keyboard, I can go ahead and nudge that back into place. So I want it to be about there. Next, let's go ahead and create that satchel that she has. The way we're going to do this is, first we're going to create the strap. So using my polygonal lasso tool, I'm going to go ahead and come across just like so, and then I'm going to come across in that same line but a little bit further down. So something like that should work. Next, let's go ahead and copy this and paste it onto a new layer and get it into the same position. And then using my transform tool, we can go ahead and enlarge that just a tiny bit to about there should be good. And we'll use the arrow keys on our keyboard to get it into the correct position. And I'm also going to use my erase tool to erase away a little bit of that area right there. Next, let's go ahead and create the actual satchel bag. So the way we're going to create this is we're going to cut it out of our body shape. So I'm going to come back down to that layer, which is right there. Then using my lasso tool, I'm going to go ahead and create a shape that's about the shape that I want my satchel bag to be. So about like that should be good. Then I can go ahead and copy and paste that shape. So now I have that shape there. And I'm going to drag that above my strap. Now this is really hard to see right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn off these bottom 2 layers so we can only see the satchel while we're working on it. Next, let's go ahead and zoom in there real quick, and using my lasso tool, I'm going to go ahead and cut away top part of my satchel, and I want to make sure that I create a shape in there for my buckle, so something like so, and then we'll keep coming over. Great. Now let's go ahead and copy that and paste it, and we'll move it over just like so. So we want it to be hanging over this edge just a little bit. Great. Now let's go ahead and start coloring this in. So if we have a look at what color her satchel is, it's basically the same color as her skin, just a little less desaturated. So I'm going to go ahead and select my skin tone again, and then I'm going to create a new layer above this layer and create a clipping mask out of it. So now that's a clipping mask for our top piece of our satchel. Then using my fill tool, I can go ahead and fill that in, change the blend mode to multiply, and I think I want it to be a little desaturated, so I'm going to bring it over to the less desaturated side, so about there should be good, and I'll fill that in. I think that works much better. Now let's go ahead and do the same down here, so we'll add a new layer, create clipping mask, fill that in, and change it to multiply. Perfect. Next, let's go ahead and come back up to our top color layer, and I'm gonna go ahead and grab a yellow, and somewhere about here should be good. Then using my brush tool, I can go ahead and fill in my buckle shape. So I'm gonna find where that shape is real quick. So about there, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill that shape in. And then I can even grab a white and bring my brush size down. And I'll add a little bit of white in there. And then I wanna come back to my satchel color, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill in these areas like so. And the only reason why we painted over the edge of it is so that we could find where that shape was. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and grab this dark brown that we used before, and I'm gonna go ahead and use that just like so to give a little bit of shadow to our buckle and to make it work. Perfect. So now we have our buckle. Next, let's go ahead and add some color to the rest of our body and the strap. So I'm gonna turn those layers back on. And we'll start with our strap. So I'll add a new layer above that, right click, create clipping layer mask, find that satchel color and fill that in, and then I'm going to change that to a multiply layer. Perfect. And lastly, let's do that body. So I'm going to create a new layer above it, right click that new layer and create that clipping mask. Now in this layer, we want to find this green color right here. So I'm going to come into, it's almost an aqua bluish green, so I'm going to come somewhere about there and find where that is. It looks pretty saturated. Maybe come a little bit more towards the blues, tiniest bit more. Perfect. Hit OK. I'm gonna fill that in like so, and then put that on multiply, and that looks pretty good to me. Lastly, let's go ahead and add in her red pants. So I'm gonna find my red color, so I'll come all the way to a saturated red, and using my brush tool, and I'm gonna want to bring my size up, I'm gonna go ahead and paint a line straight across by holding down shift while I paint it, and that will create that perfectly straight line. And then I'm gonna grab a little bit lighter version of this red, hit OK. I'm gonna bring that brush size down, and I'm gonna paint straight across like so to add that extra light band across her pants. Now let's move on to the hands and the feet. Before we do, let's select all these layers, and we're gonna go ahead and group them into a folder, and then we can go ahead and start working on the hands and feet. So let's turn our back layer back on, and I want to select my shape right here that I have for my hands. So I'm gonna select that, copy it, and paste it. Then I'm going to drag that up above my two other folders so it's on top, and then we can go ahead and turn off this background layer. And the hands are looking a little bit too large for me, so what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and shrink that down just like so. And now we want to add that color to it, so I'm going to add a new layer above it, right click, create clipping mask, and then we'll find our skin tone and fill that in, put it on multiply. And I think I grabbed the wrong skin tone, so I'm gonna come up to this one right here. I think that's the correct one, and refill that in. Yeah, that looks much better. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and select these two layers and copy them. And then I can go ahead and take that copy and drag it over like so. Now the reason why I did that is because we want these to be separate. So if we have to animate this character, we have the hands on separate layers. Lastly, let's go ahead and create those feet. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this background layer back on and come down to it. And then I'm gonna select this middle-sized circle, and I'm gonna copy that and paste it, and then we can bring it down like so. And then we wanna bring it up with our other layers, so that way we can put those all into one folder. And then I'm gonna shrink this down a little bit more because we want it about the same size as our body. And if you remember, we shrunk our body down just a little bit. So about there should be good. Maybe just the tiniest bit smaller. Then we can go ahead and hit OK. Then using my lasso tool, I'm gonna go ahead and cut around the bottom. And I wanna give it a pretty rounded edge, just like so. And then I'm gonna go ahead and delete that selection. So now we have the shape of our foot. Let's drag that down a little bit further to about there. And I'm going to use my arrow keys to nudge it over to the left just a little bit. And then I'm going to turn off this background shapes so that we can see what we're doing. So now we have one foot. Next, what we want to do is we want to add some color to that foot. So I'm going to add a new layer. Then I'm going to create it into a clipping mask. But now if we have a look at our character, you'll see her feet are white. Okay? And this is going to change things a little bit. So what we want to do is we want to fill our layer in with white. But rather than changing it to a multiply blend mode, because you'll see that doesn't really give us a white foot. What we need to do is we need to put it on overlay. Anytime you have a really light color, you want to use overlay. Now the white kind of washes out the texture, so what we need to do is we need to bring that opacity down to about 50%. So now we still get a little bit of that texture, but it also still looks white. Now we can go ahead and select both these layers and copy them and drag them over like so. And we're trying to keep it lined up with both our hands, our feet. So something like this should work. See how that looks. Great, so now we have the basic layout of our character. Lastly, what we want to do is we want to add some detail in there to make her look real. So first off, we're going to go ahead and add a drop shadow in there, because underneath her hair, for example, there would be a drop shadow. So I'm going to select all these layers that we just created for the hands and the feet, and I'm going to put those into a new folder, and then I'm going to come into my head folder and I'm going to open that up. And what I want to do is I want to select the shape of my hair, so I'm going to hold down Control or Command if you're on a Mac, and you'll select the thumbnail on that layer, and now you see we get a nice selection around the shape of our head. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer on top of our head layer. So that's going to automatically create a clipping layer mask that will be underneath our skin tone color. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill that layer in with black. But you'll notice that when I fill that in, you can't see it because it's only filling in within the selection of my hair shape. So now if we go ahead and select out of that, we can go ahead and nudge that down with our arrow keys just like so. And you'll see that because it's part of a clipping layer mask, it doesn't go outside of the shape of our head. Now let's go ahead and change the blend mode on this from normal to overlay. And that will give us that nice drop shadow on there. We can turn down our opacity just a little bit so it's not so strong. Perfect. Next, what we want to do is we want to add a bevel to the edges of all of our pieces, because you'll see here it looks a lot more realistic because it has a three-dimensional highlight and shadow on the edges of each piece of cardboard. So the way we're going to create that is we're going to start with the head. So clicking on the head layer, I'm going to come down to Effects, and then I'm going to come up to Bevel, Emboss. And that's going to bring up a window that allows me to change the settings for my bevel and emboss. Now I already have it set up the way we want it, so you can play around with this and see what you want. So we can play with the depth and you'll see how that changes it. You can play with the size of your bevel. You can also play with the softness of it. And so the way I have it set up right now, you can go ahead and pause the video and look at my settings to see what I have it set at. But for now, I'm just gonna leave it exactly at this. We're gonna go ahead and hit OK. And then I'm gonna go ahead and right click that layer and come up to Copy Layer Style. So now I have the layer style that I've used for this layer. And I can go ahead and come up to another layer, such as my hair layer. And I can right click that and paste the layer style. And so now you see it also gets the bevel applied to it. Now, another thing you can do at this stage is you can add some pencil lines on your character. Because these are really small and supposed to look like they're handmade, if you look at them close up in images on Google Images, you'll see that they actually have some pencil marks on them where you can see where they traced out the circles and the shapes and then they cut them out. So let's go ahead and add some of that detail in there. So I'm going to add it on her skin, so I'll add a new layer underneath all my other layers, so my skin layer and my shadow layer. So I'll add that layer in, and then using a dark gray color, so somewhere about there should be good, I'll hit OK. And then I'm going to switch my brush over to a pencil brush, so this one right here should work fine, and you'll see it has a nice pencil texture. And then I want to bring my brush size down, and I'm going to put my brush opacity at about 20%, and I do that by hitting the number 2 on my keyboard. And then I can go ahead and start sketching in some pencil lines in there. Great. Let's add some to the hair also, so I'll add a new layer underneath my hair color, and I can go ahead and just add a few simple pencil lines right here. We could even add a circle like so. Alright, cool. So that makes it look a lot more realistic, like as if there had been a pencil that has drawn on this. Next, let's move on to the hands and the feet. So I'm going to open that folder, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click my first layer, and I'm going to paste the layer style. So now you see my hand has that layer style on it. I can also go ahead and add a new layer above that and add in a little bit of some pencil markings on there, just like so. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other hand. So I'll right click that layer and paste layer style. And then we're going to go ahead and apply that to every single layer in this folder. So we'll right click, paste layer style, right click, paste layer style. So now you see everything has that nice layer style, and it makes it look a lot more three-dimensional and realistic. Next, let's go ahead and move on to our body. So I'm going to close this folder up, and then I'm going to come into my body folder. We're going to do the same things. So we'll right click and we're going to paste that layer style, and we're going to go ahead and do this for every single layer in here. Alright, cool. So now all of that has the layer styles applied to it. Next, what we want to do is we want to add some of that pencil detail in there, especially on the satchel. So let's find our satchel layer. So our first layer is right there. Let's go ahead and add a new layer above that, and we can zoom in there so we can see what we're doing. And using my brush tool, I'm going to go ahead and start painting in some of that penciling detail. And I'm going to bring my brush opacity up to 30% so I can see it just a little bit better. And then we can move down to the next layer, add a new layer above it, and I'll add some more penciling texture in there. And lastly, let's move on to this strap that's holding the satchel. So I'll add a new layer above that, and I'm going to go ahead and add some stitching texturing in there. So it's basically just going to be a dotted line going across here. Just like so. Awesome. Now, another thing you can do to make it look a little bit more realistic is you can go ahead and erase away some of the edges of these shapes. So for example, if I go ahead and close this folder up, and then I'm going to open my head folder back up and come into my head shape. So let's find that shape. It's right here. What I can do is I can go in there with an eraser and erase away some of those edges like so. And that's just going to give it a little bit more of a realistic look, because it's not going to have such a perfect round shape. It's going to have a little bit more of an organic hand cut out shape. Alright, that brings us to the end of this lecture. I really hope you enjoyed this lecture, and if there's other games out there that you want to learn how to build, let me know and I'll definitely create tutorials on it. My name's Jason, and thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this tutorial, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll be sending you many more videos just like this one.